The president says that that doctor is the real face of these refugees and not the one that you and some of your colleagues on this stage are painting, that you prefer the face of fear and terror, and that you would refuse to let in anyone into this country seeking legitimate asylum. How do you answer that?
It's not fear and terror, it's reality. You just have to look today at Indonesia, bombings all over. You look at California, you look frankly at Paris, where there's the strictest no-gun policy of any city anywhere in the world, and you see what happens, 130 people dead with many to follow. They're very, very badly wounded. Some will follow. And you look around and you see what's happening, and this is not the case. When he introduced the doctor, very nice, everything perfect, but that's not representative of what you have in that line of migration. That could be the great Trojan horse. It could be people that are going to do great, great destruction. When I look at the migration, I looked at the line, I said it actually on your show recently, where are the women? There look like very few women, very few children, strong, powerful men, young, and people are looking at that and they're saying, what's going on? You look at the kind of damage that two people that got married, they were radicalized, they got married, they killed 15 people, and actually 14, going to be probably 16. But you look at that and you take a look, a good strong look, and that's what we have. We owe $19 trillion. Our country's a mess, and we can't let all these people come into our countries and break our borders. We can't do it.
Senator Cruz, the New York Times is reporting that you failed to properly disclose $1 million in loans from Goldman Sachs and Citibank during your Senate race. Your campaign says it was inadvertent. $1 million is inadvertent?
Well, Maria, thank you for passing on that hit piece on the front page of the New York Times. You know, the nice thing about the mainstream media, they don't hide their views. The New York Times a few weeks back had a columnist who wrote a column saying anybody but Cruz. Had that actually that same columnist wrote a column comparing me to an evil demonic spirit from the movie It Follows that jumps apparently from body to body possessing people. So, you know, the New York Times and I don't exactly have the warmest of relationships. Now, in terms of their really stunning hit piece, what they mentioned is when I was running for Senate, unlike Hillary Clinton, I don't have masses of money in the bank, hundreds of millions of dollars. When I was running for Senate, just about every lobbyist, just about all of the establishment opposed me in the Senate race in Texas. And my opponent in that race was worth over $200 million. He put a $25 million check up from his own pocket to fund that campaign. And my wife Heidi and I, we ended up investing everything we own. We took a loan against our assets to invest it in that campaign to defend ourselves against those attacks. And the entire New York Times attack is that I disclosed that loan on one filing with the United States Senate that was a public filing, but it was not on a second filing with the FEC. Both of those filings were public, and yes, I made a paperwork error disclosing it on one piece of paper instead of the other, but if that's the best hit the New York Times has got, they better go back to the well.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, we are just getting started here in South Carolina, and there is a lot to get to, including things like gun rights, the national debt, and the sometimes nasty war words between, well, a couple of these fellows up here. More to this. to the Republican presidential debate right here in North Charleston, South Carolina. Let's get right back to the questions, and I'll start with you, Senator Cruz. Now, you are, of course, a strict constitutionalist. No one would doubt that. And as you know, the U.S. Constitution says only natural-born citizens are eligible for the office of President of the United States. Stop me if you've heard this before. Now, you were born in Canada to an American mother, so you were and are considered an American citizen. But that fellow next to you, Donald Trump, and others, have said that being born in Canada means you are not natural born, and that has raised questions about your eligibility. Do you want to try to close this topic once and for all tonight?
Well, Neil, I'm glad we are focusing on the important topics of the evening. You know, back in September, my friend Donald said that he had had his lawyers look at this from every which way, and there was no issue there. There was nothing to this birther issue. Now, since September, the Constitution hasn't changed. But the poll numbers have. And I recognize that Donald is dismayed that his poll numbers are falling in Iowa. But the facts and the law here are really quite clear. Under long-standing U.S. law, the child of a U.S. citizen born abroad is a natural-born citizen. If a soldier has a child abroad, that child is a natural-born citizen. That's why John McCain, even though he was born in Panama, was eligible to run for president. If an American missionary has a child abroad, that child is a natural-born citizen. That's why George Romney, Mitt's dad, was eligible to run for president even though he was born in Mexico. At the end of the day, the legal issue is quite straightforward, but I would note that the birther theories that Donald has been relying on, some of the more extreme ones insist that you must not only be born on U.S. soil, but have two parents born on U.S. soil. Under that theory, not only would I be disqualified, Marco Rubio would be disqualified, Bobby Jindal would be disqualified, and interestingly enough, Donald J. Trump would be disqualified. Because Donald's mother was born in Scotland. She was naturalized. Now, Donald,
but I was born here.
On the issue of citizenship, Donald.
Big difference.
On the issue of citizenship, Donald, I'm not going to use your mother's birth against you.
Okay, good. Because it wouldn't work.
You're an American, as is everybody else on this stage, and I would suggest we focus on who's best prepared to be commander-in-chief, because that's the most important question facing the country.
Mr. Trump, did he address that? Did you raise this because of his rising poll number?
Well, let me just tell you something, and you know because you just saw the numbers yourself. NBC Wall Street Journal just came out with a poll. Headline, Trump way up, Cruz going down. I mean, so don't, so you can't, they don't like the Wall Street Journal, they don't like NBC, but I like the poll. And frankly, it just came out. And in Iowa now, as you know, Ted, in the last 3 polls, I'm beating you. So, you know, you shouldn't misrepresent how well you're doing with the polls. You don't have to say that. In fact, I was all for you until you started doing that, because that's a misrepresentation. Number one. Number two, this isn't me saying it. I don't care. I think I'm going to win fair and square. I don't have to win this way. Thank you. Lawrence Tribe and numerous from Harvard, said that there is a serious question as to whether or not Ted can do this, okay? There are other attorneys that feel, and very, very fine constitutional attorneys, that feel that because he was not born on the land, he cannot run for office. Here's the problem. We're running. He does great. I win. I choose him as my vice presidential candidate, and the Democrats sue because we can't take him along for the ride. I don't like that, okay? The fact is, and if for some reason he beats the rest of the field, if for some, see, they don't like that. They don't like that. But, no, they don't like that he beats the rest of the field because they want me. But if for some reason, Neil, he beats the rest of the field, I already know the Democrats are going to be bringing a suit You have a big lawsuit over your head while you're running, and if you become the nominee, who the hell knows if you can even serve in office? So you should go out, get a declaratory judgment, let the courts decide, and you shouldn't have mentioned the polls because I would have been much different.
Why now? Why are you raising this issue now?
Because now he's doing a little bit better. No, I didn't care before. It's true. No, it's true. Hey, look, he never had a chance. Now he's doing better. He's got probably a 4 or 5% chance.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Well, Neil,
The fact is, there's a big overhang. There's a big question mark on your head. And you can't do that to the party. You really can't. You can't do that to the party. You have to have certainty. Even if it was a 1% chance, and it's far greater than 1%, because he wasn't born. I mean, you have great constitutional lawyers that say you can't run. If there was and you know, I'm not bringing a suit, I promise. But the Democrats are going to bring a lawsuit. And you have to have certainty. You can't have a question. I can agree with you or not, but you can't have a question over your head.
Senator, you want to respond?
Well, listen, I've spent my entire life defending the Constitution before the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to be taking legal advice from Donald Trump.
You don't have to. Take it from Lawrence Trump. You don't have to.
What I'll tell you also.
Take it from your professor.
What I will
Take
tell
it from
you
your own
also,
professor.
I can tell you one thing.
The chances of any litigation proceeding and succeeding on this are zero.
It's wrong.
Now, Mr. Trump
It's wrong.
is very focused on Larry Tribe. Let me tell you who Larry Tribe is. He's a left-wing judicial activist, Harvard Law professor, who was Al Gore's lawyer in Bush versus Gore. He's a major Hillary Clinton supporter, and there's a reason why Hillary's supporters are echoing Donald's attacks on me.
He is not
Hillary
the only one.
Wants
he
to
is
face
not
Donald
the only
Trump
one.
in the general election.
There are many lawyers.
And I'll tell you what, Donald, you very kindly just a moment ago offered me the VP slot. I'll tell you what. If this all works out, I'm happy to consider naming you as VP. And so if you happen to be right, you could get the top job at the end of the day.
No, I think if it doesn't... No. I like that. I like it. I'd consider it. But I think I'll go back to building buildings if it doesn't work out.
Actually, I'd love to get you to build a wall.
I have a feeling it's going to work out, actually.
Thank you.
Neil, I can tell
Neil,
Neil, I can tell you this.
Let me
Neil,
say this, because I was invoked in that question. So let me just say in that answer. Let me say the real question here. I hate to interrupt this episode of Court TV, but the real. I think we have to get back to what this election has to be about. Okay, listen, this is the greatest country in the history of mankind. But in 2008, we elected a president that didn't want to fix America. He wants to change America. We elected a president that doesn't believe in the Constitution. He undermines it. We elected a president that's weakening America on the global stage. We elected a president that doesn't believe in the free enterprise system. This election has to be about reversing all of that damage. That's why I'm running for office, because when I become president of the United States, on my first day in office, we are going to repeal every single one of his unconstitutional executive orders. When I'm president of the United States, we are getting rid of Obamacare, and we are rebuilding our military. And when I'm president, we're not just going to have a president that gives a State of the Union and says, America's the greatest country in the world. When I'm president, we're going to have a president that acts like it.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Trump, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, in her response to the State of the Union address, appeared to choose sides within the party, saying Republicans should resist, quote, the siren call of the angriest voices. She confirmed she was referring to you, among others. Was she out of line? And how would a President Trump unite the party?
Okay. First of all, Nikki this afternoon said I'm a friend of hers, actually a close friend. And wherever you're sitting, Nikki, I am a friend. We're friends. That's good. But she did say there was anger. And I could say, oh, I'm not angry. I'm very angry because our country is being run horribly. And I will gladly accept the mantle of anger. Our military is a disaster. Our health care is a horror show. Obamacare, we're going to repeal it and replace it. We have no borders. Our vets are being treated horribly. Illegal immigration is beyond belief. Our country is being run by incompetent people. And yes, I am angry. And I won't be angry when we fix it. But until we fix it, I'm very, very angry. And I say that to Nikki. So when Nikki said that, I wasn't offended. She said the truth. One of your colleagues interviewed me and said, well, she said you were angry. And I said to myself, she's right. I'm not fighting that. I didn't find it offensive at all. I'm angry because our country is a mess.
Look,
but what are you going to do about it?
I'm sorry, just with time constraints. You and Governor Christie have been exchanging some fairly nasty words of late, and I will allow the governor to respond as well. The governor went so far as to say you won't be able to slime your way to the White House. He's referring to a series of ads done by a PAC speaking on your behalf that say, quote, one high-tax, Common Core, liberal, energy-loving, Obamacare, Medicaid expanding president is enough. You think you went too far on that, and do you want to apologize to the governor?
You know, as I said already twice in this debate, we have a very serious problem in this country. We have a president of the United States that is undermining this country's security and expanding the role of our government. Well, I'm going to answer your question, Neil. This president is undermining the constitutional basis of this government. This president is undermining our military. He's undermining our standing in the world. I like Chris Christie, but we cannot afford to have a president of the United States that supports Common Core. We cannot afford to have a president of the United States that supports gun control. This president is more interested in less interested in funding the military than he is in funding he's more interested in funding Planned Parenthood than he is in funding the military. Chris Christie wrote a check to Planned Parenthood. All I'm saying is our next president has to be someone that undoes the damage Barack Obama has done to this country. It cannot be someone that agrees with his agenda, because the damage he has done to America is extraordinary. Let me tell you, if we don't get this election right, there may be no turning back for America. We are on the verge of being the first generation of Americans that leave our children worse off than ourselves. And so I just truly, with all my heart, believe, I, like everybody on the stage, no one is a socialist, no one here is under FBI investigation, so we are a good group of people.
But our next president, is he a liberal?
Unfortunately, Governor Christie has endorsed many of the ideas that Barack Obama supports, whether it's Common Core or gun control or the appointment of Sonia Sotomayor or the donation he made to Planned Parenthood. Our next president and our Republican nominee cannot be someone who supports those positions.
Governor?
You know, I stood on the stage and watched Marco and rather indignantly look at Governor Bush and say, someone told you that because we're running for the same office, that criticizing me will get you to that office. It appears that the same someone's been whispering in old Marco's ear, too. And so the indignation that you carry on some of this stuff, you have to also own then. So let's set the facts straight. First of all, I didn't support Sonia Sotomayor. Secondly, I never wrote a check to Planned Parenthood. Third, if you look at my record as governor of New Jersey, I have vetoed a .50 caliber rifle ban. I have vetoed a reduction in clip size. I have vetoed a statewide ID system for gun owners, and I have pardoned six out-of-state folks who came through our state and were arrested for owning a gun legally in another state, so they never had to face charges. And on Common Core has been eliminated in New Jersey. So listen, this is the difference between being a governor and being a senator. See, when you're a senator, what you get to do is just talk and talk and talk, and you talk so much that nobody can ever keep up with what you're saying is accurate or not. When you're a governor, you're held accountable for everything you do. And the people of New Jersey have seen it. And the last piece is this. I like Marco, too. And 2 years ago, he called me a conservative reformer that New Jersey needed. That was before he was running against me. Now that he is, he's changed his tune. I'm never going to change my tune. I like Marco Rubio. He's a good guy, a smart guy, and he would be a heck of a lot better president than Hillary Rodham Clinton would ever be.
Neil, my name was mentioned here. Neil, my name was mentioned as well. Here's the deal. Chris is totally right. He's been a good governor. And he's a heck of a lot better than his predecessor that would have bankrupted New Jersey. Everybody on this stage is better than Hillary Clinton. And I think the focus ought to be on making sure that we leave this nomination process as wild and woolly as it's going to be. This is not beanbag. These attack ads are going to be part of life. Everybody just needs to get used to it. Everybody's record's going to be scrutinized. And at the end of the day, we need to unite behind the winner so that we can defeat Hillary Clinton, because she is a disaster. Our country can rise up again, but we need to have a compelling conservative agenda that we present to the American people in a way that doesn't disparage people, that unites us around our common purpose. And so everybody needs to discount some of the things you're going to hear in these ads and discount the back and forth here, because every person here is better than Hillary Clinton.
Neil, I was mentioned too.
You were?
Yeah, I said everybody.
Oh.
And I just want to take this opportunity to say, in the 2012 election, we, and when I say we, Republicans tore themselves apart. We have to stop this because, if we manage to damage ourselves and we lose the next election and a progressive gets in there and they get 2 or 3 Supreme Court picks, this nation is over as we know it. And we got to look at the big picture here.
Governor Kasich. Governor Kasich, Hillary Clinton is getting some serious competition from Senator Bernie Sanders. He's now at 41% in the latest CBS New York Times poll. Vice President Biden sang his praises, saying Bernie is speaking to a yearning that is deep and real, and he has credibility on it. So what does it say about our country that a candidate who is a self-avowed socialist and who doesn't think a 90% tax rate is too high could be the Democratic nominee?
Well, if that's the case, we're going to win every state if Bernie Sanders is the nominee. That's not even an issue. But look, and I know Bernie, and I can promise you he's not going to be president of the United States. So here's the situation, I think, Maria, and this is what we have to, I've got to tell you, when wages don't rise, and they haven't for a lot of families for a number of years, it's very, very difficult for them. Part of the reason why it hasn't risen is because sometimes we're not giving people the skills they need. Sometimes it's because the Federal Reserve kept interest rates so low that the wealthy were able to invest in strong assets like the stock market when everybody else was left behind. People are upset about it. I'll tell you what else they're upset about. You're 50, you're 51 years old, and some kid walks in and tells you you're out of work, and you don't know where to go and where to turn. Do we have an answer for that? We do. There are ways to retrain the 50 and 51-year-olds because they've got great value. I'll tell you what else people are concerned about. Their kids come out of college, they have high debt, and they can't get a good job. We got to do a lot about the high cost of higher education, but we've got to make sure we're training people for jobs that exist, that are good jobs that can pay. Let me tell you that in this country, people are concerned about their economic future. They're very concerned about it. And they wonder whether somebody is getting something to keeping them from getting it. That's not the America that I've ever known. My father used to say, Johnny, we don't hate the rich. We just want to be the rich. And we just got to make sure that every American has the tools in K through 12 and in vocational education and higher education. And we got to fight like crazy so people can think the American dream still exists, because it does, with rising wages, with full employment, and with everybody in America, and I mean everybody in America, having an opportunity to realize the American dream of having a better life than their mother and their father. I'm president. Look, I've done it once. I've done it once in Washington with great jobs and lower taxes. The economy was really booming. And now in Ohio, with the same formula, wages higher than the national average, a growth to 385,000 jobs. It's not that hard. Just know where you want to go, stick to your guts, get it done, because our children and grandchildren are counting on us to get it done. And folks, we will. You count on it.
Dr. Carson, one of the other candidates on this stage has brought up Bill Clinton's past indiscretions. Is that a legitimate topic in this election? And what do you think of the notion that Hillary Clinton is an enabler of sexual misconduct?
Well, there's no question that we should be able to look at any past president, whether they're married to somebody who's running for president or not, in terms of their past behavior and what it means. But, here's the real issue. Is this America anymore? Do we still have standards? Do we still have values and principles? You look at what's going on you see all the divisiveness and the hatred that goes on in our society. You know, we have a war on virtually everything: race wars, gender wars, income wars, religious wars, age wars. Every war you can imagine, we have people at each other's throats. And our strength is actually in our unity. You know, you go to the internet, you start reading an article, and you go to the comment section. You cannot go 5 comments down before people are calling each other all manner of names. Where did that spirit come from in America? It did not come from our Judeo-Christian roots, I can tell you that. And wherever it came from, we need to start once again recognizing that there is such a thing as right and wrong. And let's not let the secular progressives drive that out of us. The majority of people in America actually have values and principles, and they believe in the very things that made America great. They've been beaten into submission. It's time for us to stand up for what we believe in.
All right, we are not done. Coming up, one of the top issues people are talking about on Facebook, guns. And you can join us live on this stage in the conversation during this commercial break right from home. You can go to facebook.com/FoxBusiness. We will be streaming live and talking about how we think the debate is going so far. We're back in a moment from Charleston, South Carolina.
of killing 9 people in a nearby church. Reportedly had not passed his background check when he got his gun. What is the harm in tightening standards for not only who buys guns, but those who sell them?
First of all, I'd like to recognize Governor Haley for her incredible leadership in the aftermath of the Emmanuel AME Church killings. I also want to recognize the people in that church that showed the grace of God and the grace of forgiveness and the mercy that they showed. I don't know if any of us could have done what they did one after another within 48 hours of that tragedy taking place. Look, here's the deal. In this particular case, the FBI made a mistake. The law itself requires a background check, but they didn't fulfill their part of the bargain within the time that they were supposed to do. We don't need to add new rules. We need to make sure the FBI does its job, because that person should not have gotten a gun. It would not have passed the background check. The first impulse of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton is to take rights away from law-abiding citizens. That's always what they do, whether it's the San Bernardino terrorist attack or if it's these tragedies that take place. I think we ought to focus on what the bigger issue is. It isn't law-abiding gun owners. Look, I have an A+ rating in the NRA, and we also have a reduction in gun violence because in Florida, if you commit a crime with a gun, you're going away. You're going away for a long, long while. And that's what we should focus on, is the violence in our communities. Target the efforts for people that are committing crimes with guns. And if you do that and get it right, you're going to be much better off than creating a political argument where there's a big divide. The other issue is mental health. That's a serious issue that we could work on. Republicans and Democrats alike believe this. The president's first impulse is to do this by executive order, power he doesn't have. Why not go to Congress and in a bipartisan way begin to deal with the process of mental health issues so that people that are spiraling out of control because of mental health challenges don't have access to guns?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Trump, are there any circumstances that you think we should be limiting gun sales of any kind in America?
No. I am a Second Amendment person. If we had guns in California on the other side, where the bullets went in the different direction, you wouldn't have 14 or 15 people dead right now. If even in Paris, if they had guns on the other side going in the opposite direction, you wouldn't have 130 people plus dead. So the answer is no. And what Jeb said is absolutely correct. We have a huge mental health problem in this country. We're closing hospitals, we're closing wards, we're closing so many because the states want to save money. We have to get back into looking at what's causing. You know, the guns don't pull the trigger. It's the people that pull the trigger. And we have to find out what is going on. We have to protect our Second Amendment, and you cannot do this, and certainly what Barack Obama was doing with the executive order. He doesn't want to get people together, you know, the old-fashioned way where you get Congress. You get the Congress, you get the Senate, you get together, you do legislation. He just writes out an order, executive order. Not supposed to happen that way.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Rubio, you said that President Obama wants to take people's guns away, yet under his presidency, gun sales have more than doubled. That doesn't sound like a White House unfriendly to gun owners.
That sounds like people are afraid the president's going to take their guns away.
Of course.
Look, the Second Amendment is not an option. It is not a suggestion. It is a constitutional right of every American to be able to protect themselves and their families. I am convinced that if this president could confiscate every gun in America, he would. I am convinced that this president, if he could get rid of the Second Amendment, he would. I am convinced because I see how he works with his Attorney General, not to defend the Second Amendment, but to figure out ways to undermine it. I have seen him appoint people to our courts, not to defend the Second Amendment, but to figure out ways to undermine it. Here's my second problem. None of these instances that the president points to as the reason why he's doing these things would have been prevented. You know why? Because criminals don't buy their guns from a gun show. They don't buy their guns from a collector. And they don't buy their guns from a gun store. They steal them. They get them on the black market. And let me tell you, ISIS and terrorists do not get their guns from a gun show. His answer You name it. It does. If there's an act of violence in America, his immediate answer before he even knows the facts is gun control. Here's a fact. We are in a war against ISIS. They are trying to attack us here in America. They attacked us in Philadelphia last week. They attacked us in San Bernardino 2 weeks ago. And the last line standing between them and our families might be us and a gun. When I'm President of the United States, we are defending the Second Amendment, not undermining it the way Barack Obama does.
But what fact can you point to, Senator?
What fact
can you point to that the president would take away everyone's gun? You don't think that's extreme?
About every 2 weeks he holds a press conference talking about how he can't wait to restrict people's access to guns. He has never defended law. I'll give you a fact. Well, let me tell you this. Do you remember when he ran for president of the United States and he was a candidate and he went and said, these Americans with traditional values, they are bitter people and they cling to their guns and to their religion. That tells you right away where he was headed on all of this. This president, every chance he has ever gotten, has tried to undermine the Second Amendment. He doesn't meet. Here's the difference. When he meets with the Attorney General in the White House, it's not, how can we protect the Second Amendment rights of Americans? It's, give me options on how I can make it harder for law-abiding people to buy guns. That will never happen when I am President of the United States.
Governor Christie, you too have criticized the president's recent executive action on gun control, saying it's unconstitutional, another step to bypass Congress. But hasn't your own position on guns evolved, sir? The New Jersey Star-Ledger reports that you signed several laws to regulate the possession of firearms and that you argued back in August 2013, and I quote, these common sense measures will strengthen New Jersey's already tough gun laws. So isn't that kind of what the president wants to do now?
No, absolutely not. The president wants to do things without working with his Congress, without working with the legislature, without getting the consent of the American people. And the fact is that that's not a democracy, that's a dictatorship. And we need to be very, very concerned about that. See, here's the thing. I don't think the founders put the Second Amendment as number 2 by accident. I don't think they dropped all the amendments into a hat and picked them out of a hat. I think they made the Second Amendment because they thought it was just that important. And fact is, in New Jersey, what we have done is to make it easier now to get a conceal and carry permit. We have made it easier to do that, not harder. And the way we've done it is properly through regulatory action, not by signing unconstitutional executive orders. This guy is a petulant child. That's what he is. I mean, you know, fact is, Neil, let's think about, and I hope the president's watching tonight, because here's what I'd like to tell him. Mr. President, we're not against you, we're against your policies. When you became president, you had a Democratic Congress and a filibuster-proof Democratic Senate. You had only 21 Republican governors in this country. And now, after 7 years of your policies, we have the biggest majority we've had since the 1920s in the House, a Republican majority in the Senate, and 31 out of 50 Republican governors. The American people have rejected your agenda, and now you're trying to go around it. That's not right. It's not constitutional, and we are going to kick your rear end out of the White House come this fall.
Senator Cruz, to stop mass shootings and violent crime up in 30 cities across the country?
The answer is simple. You prosecute criminals. You target the bad guys. You know, a minute ago, Neil asked, what has President Obama done to illustrate that he wants to go after guns? Well, he appointed Eric Holder as Attorney General. Eric Holder said he viewed his mission as brainwashing the American people against guns. He appointed Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court, someone who has been a radical against the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. He launched Fast and Furious, illegally selling guns to Mexican drug lords that were then used to shoot law enforcement officials. And I'll tell you what Hillary Clinton has said. Hillary Clinton says she agrees with the dissenters, the Supreme Court dissenters in the Heller case. There were 4 dissenters, and they said that they believe the Second Amendment protects no individual right to keep and bear arms whatsoever, which means if their view prevailed and the next president's going to get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 Supreme Court justices, the court will rule that not a single person in this room has any right under the Second Amendment, and the government could confiscate your guns. And I'll note that California's senator, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, said if she could say to Mr. America and Mrs. America, give me your guns, I'm rounding them up, she would. And let me make a final point on this. Listen, in any Republican primary, everyone is going to say they support the Second Amendment. unless you are clinically insane. That's what you say in a primary. But the voters are savvier than that. They recognize that people's actions don't always match their words. I've got a proven record fighting to defend the Second Amendment. There's a reason Gun Owners of America has endorsed me in this race. There's a reason the NRA gave me their Carter Knight Freedom Fund Award. And there's a reason when Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer came after our right to keep and bear arms that I led the opposition along with millions of Americans. We defeated that gun control legislation. And I would note the other individuals on this stage were nowhere to be found in that fight.
Senator, let me follow up and switch gears. Senator Cruz, you suggested Mr. Trump, quote, embodies New York values. Could you explain what you mean by that?
You know, I think most people know exactly what New York values are.
I am from New York.
You're from New York, so you might not. But I promise you in the state of South Carolina, they do. And listen, there are many, many wonderful, wonderful working men and women in the state of New York. But everyone understands that the values in New York City are socially liberal or pro-abortion or pro-gay marriage, focused around money and the media. And I would note, indeed, the reason I said that is I was asked, my friend Donald has taken to at his events playing Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. And I was asked what I thought of that, and I said, well, if he wanted to play a song, maybe he could play New York, New York. And you know, the concept of New York values is not that complicated to figure out. Not too many years ago, Donald did a long interview with Tim Russert. And in that interview, he explained his views on a whole host of issues that were very, very different from the views he's describing now. And his explanation, he said, look, I'm from New York. That's what we believe in New York. Those aren't Iowa values, but this is what we believe in New York. And so that was his explanation. And I guess I can frame it another way. Not a lot of conservatives come out of Manhattan. I'm just saying.
Are you sure about that?
Maria? So conservatives actually do come out of Manhattan, including William F. Buckley and others, just so you understand. And just so, if I could, because he insulted a lot of people, I've had more calls on that statement that Ted made. New York is a great place. It's got great people. It's got loving people, wonderful people. When the World Trade Center came down, I saw something that no place on earth could have handled more beautifully, more humanely than New York. You had two 110-story buildings come crashing down. I saw them come down. Thousands of people killed. And the cleanup started the next day, and it was the most horrific cleanup probably in the history of doing this and in construction. I was down there, and I'd never seen anything like it. And the people in New York fought and fought and fought, and we saw more death and even the smell of death. Nobody understood it, and it was with us for months, the smell, the air. And we rebuilt downtown Manhattan. And everybody in the world watched, and everybody in the world loved New York and loved New Yorkers. And I have to tell you, that was a very insulting statement that Ted made.
Governor Bush, for the third time in as many months, the Iranians have provoked us, detaining us, as we've been discussing with these 10 Navy sailors. Tehran has set straight into their waters. The sailors were later released, but only after being shown on video apologizing for the incident. This occurring only weeks after Iran fired multiple rockets within 1,500 yards of a U.S. aircraft carrier and then continued to test medium-range missiles. Now, you've claimed that such actions indicate Tehran has little to fear from a President Obama. I wonder, sir, what would change if they continued doing this sort of thing under President Jeb Bush?
Well, first of all, under President Jeb Bush, we would restore the strength of the military. Last week, Secretary Carter announced that the Navy is going to be cut again. It's now half the size of what it was prior to Operation Desert Storm. The deployments are too high for the military personnel. We don't have procurement being done for refreshing the equipment. The B-52 is still operational as the long-range bomber. It was inaugurated in the age of Harry Truman. The planes are older than the pilots. We're gutting our military, and so the Iranians and the Chinese and the Russians and many other countries look at the United States not as serious as we once were. We have to eliminate the sequester, rebuild our military in a way that makes it clear that we're back in the game. Secondly, as it relates to Iran, we need to confront their ambitions across the board. We should reimpose sanctions. They've already violated sanctions after this agreement was signed by testing medium-range missiles. Thirdly, we need to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to send a serious signal that we're back in the game with Israel, and sign an agreement that makes sure that the world knows that they will have technological superiority. We need to get back in the game as it relates to our Arab nations. The rest of the world is moving away from us towards other alliances because we are weak. This president and John Kerry and Hillary Clinton all have made it harder for the next president to act, but he must act to confront the ambitions of Iran. We can get back in the game to restore order and security for our own country.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Kasich, while everyone has been focusing on Iran's provocations, I'm wondering what you make of what Saudi Arabia has been doing and its recent moves in the region, including its execution of a well-known Shiite cleric and its move to dramatically increase oil production, some say in an effort to drive down oil prices and force a lot of U.S. oil producers out of business. Sure enough, oil prices have tumbled. One brokerage house now is predicting a third or more of American oil producers and those heavily invested in fracking will go bankrupt. And soon Saudi Arabia and OPEC will be back in the driver's seat. U.S. energy player Harold Hamm recently told me, with friends like these, who needs enemies? Do you agree?
Well, let me first of all talk a little bit about my experience. I served on the Defense Committee for 18 years, and by the way, one of the members of that committee was Senator Strom Thurmond from South Carolina. Let me also tell you that after the 9/11 attacks, Secretary Rumsfeld invited me to the Pentagon with a meeting of the former Secretaries of Defense. And in that meeting, I suggested we had a problem with technology, and that I wanted to take people from Silicon Valley into the Pentagon to solve our most significant problems. So I not only had the opportunity to go through the Cold War struggles in Central America, and even after 9/11 to be involved with Saudi Arabia and oil production. First of all, it's so critical for us to be energy independent, and we're getting there because of fracking. And we ought to explore, because, see, energy independence gives us leverage and flexibility. And secondly, if you want to bring jobs back to the United States of America in industry, low prices make the difference. We're seeing it in my state, and we'll see it in this country. And that's why we must make sure that we continue to frack. In terms of Saudi Arabia, look, my biggest problem with them is they're funding radical clerics through their madrasas. That is a bad deal and an evil situation, and presidents have looked the other way. And I was going to tell you, whether I'm president or not, we better make it clear to the Saudis that we're going to support you, we're in relation with you, just like we were in the first Gulf War, but you've got to knock off the funding and teaching of radical clerics who are the very people who try to destroy us and will turn around and destroy them. So look, in foreign policy, it's strength, but you got to be cool. You got to have a clear vision of where you want to go. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to suggest to you here tonight that you can't do on-the-job training. I've seen so much of it. A Soviet Union, the coming down of the wall, the issues that we saw around the world in Central America, the potential spread of communism, and 9/11, and the Gulf War. You see, with the Saudis, deliver them a strong message. But at the end of the day, we have to keep our cool, because most of the time they're going right with us, and they must be part of our coalition to destroy ISIS. And I believe we can get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
There's much more ahead, including the fight against ISIS. More from North Charleston, South Carolina, when we come right back. candidates, the man who made fighting ISIS the cornerstone of his campaign, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, is out of the race, but he joins us tonight in the audience. He says the airstrikes now in their 16th month have been ineffective. Dr. Carson.
Wait a minute. Who in their 16th month?
The airstrikes.
Oh, okay.
Now in their 16th month are ineffective. Dr. Carson, do you think Senator Graham is right in wanting to send 20,000 troops, ground troops, to Iraq and Syria to take out ISIS?
Well, there's no question that ISIS is a very serious problem, and I don't believe that this administration recognizes how serious it is. I think we need to do a lot more than we're doing. You recognize that the caliphate is what gives them the legitimacy to go out on the jihadist mission. So we need to take that away from them. The way to take that away from them is to talk to our military officials and ask them, what do you need in order to accomplish this goal? Our decision is then, do we give them what they need? I say, yes, not only do we give them what they need, but we don't tie their hands behind their back so that they can go ahead and get the job done. In addition to that, we go ahead and we take the oil from them, their source of revenue. You know, some of these engagement rules that the administration has, we're not going to bomb a tanker that's coming out of there because there might be a person in it. Give me a break. Just tell them that you put people in there, we're going to bomb them. So don't put people in there if you don't want them bombed. You know, that's so simple. And then we need to shut down their mechanisms of funding and attack their command and control centers. Why should we let their people be sitting there smoking their cigars, sitting in their comfortable chairs in Raqqa? We know to go ahead and shut off the supply routes and send in our special ops at 2 a.m. and attack them everywhere they go. They should be running all the time. Then they won't have time to plan attacks against us.
Thank you, sir. Senator Graham has also said that the U.S. will find Arab support for its coalition if it removes Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And I quote, "The now King of Saudi Arabia told us, you can have our army. You just got to deal with Assad. The Emir of Qatar said, I'll pay for the operation. But they are not going to fight ISIS and let Damascus fall into the hands of the Iranians. Assad has to go." Governor Christie, how important is it to remove Assad from power, and how would you do it?
Marie, you look at what this president and his Secretary of State Clinton, has done to get us in this spot. I mean, think about it. This is the president who said, along with his Secretary of State, drew a red line in Syria, said if Assad uses chemical weapons against his people, then we're going to attack. He used chemical weapons. He's killed now over 250,000 of his own people. And this president has done nothing. In fact, he's done worse than nothing. This president, and by the way, Secretary Clinton, who called Assad a reformer. She called Assad a reformer. Now, the fact is, what this president has done is invited Russia to play an even bigger role. Bring in Vladimir Putin to negotiate getting those chemical weapons back from Assad. Yet what do we have today? We have the Russians and the Iranians working together, not to fight ISIS, but to prop up Assad. The fact of the matter is, we're not going to have peace. We are not going to have peace in Syria. We're not going to be able to rebuild it unless we put a no-fly zone there, make it safe for those folks, so we don't have to be talking about Syrian refugees anymore. The Syrians should stay in Syria. They shouldn't be going to Europe. And here's the last piece. You're not going to have peace in Syria with Assad in charge. You're simply not. And so Senator Graham is right about this. And if we want to try to rebuild the coalitions, as Governor Kasich was saying before, then what we better do is to get to the Arab countries that believe that ISIS is a threat not only to them but to us and to world peace, and bring them together. And believe me, Assad is not worth it. And if you're going to leave this to Hillary Clinton, the person who gave us this foreign policy, the architect of it, and you're going to give her another 4 years, that's why I'm speaking out as strongly as I am about that. Hillary Clinton cannot be president. It will lead to even greater war in this world. And remember this, after Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have had nearly 8 years, we have fewer democracies in the world than we had when they started. That makes the world less peaceful, less safe. In my administration, we will help to make sure that we bring people together in the Middle East, and we will fight ISIS and defeat them.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Trump, Your comments about banning Muslims from entering the country created a firestorm. According to Facebook, it was the most talked about moment online of your entire campaign, with more than 10 million people talking about the issue. Is there anything you've heard that makes you want to rethink this position?
No. No. Look, we have to stop with political correctness. We have to get down to creating a country that's not going to have the kind of problems that we've had with people flying planes into the World Trade Centers, with the shootings in California, with all the problems all over the world. I just left Indonesia, bomb, 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 bomb. We have to find out what's going on. I said temporarily. I didn't say permanently. I said temporarily. And I have many great Muslim friends. And some of them, I will say not all, have called me and said, Donald, thank you very much. You're exposing an unbelievable problem, and we have to get to the bottom of it. And unlike President Obama, where he refuses even to use the term of what's going on, he can't use the term for whatever reason. And if you can't use the term, you're never going to solve the problem. My Muslim friends, some, said, thank you very much. We'll get to the bottom of it. But we have a serious problem. And we can't be the stupid country anymore. We're laughed at all over the world.
Donald, I hope you reconsider this, because this policy is a policy that makes it impossible to build the coalition necessary to take out ISIS. The Kurds are our strongest allies. They're Muslim. You're not going to even allow them to come to our country? The other Arab countries have a role to play in this. We cannot be the world's policeman. We can't do this unilaterally. We have to do this in unison with the Arab world. And sending that signal makes it impossible for us to be serious about taking out ISIS and restoring democracy in Syria. So I hope you'll reconsider. I hope you'll reconsider. The better way of dealing with this, is recognizing that there are people in, the Islamic terrorists inside, embedded in refugee populations. What we ought to do is tighten up our efforts to deal with the entry visa program, so that a citizen from Europe, it's harder if they've been traveling to Syria or traveling these other places where there is Islamic terrorism, make it harder, make the screening take place. We don't have to have refugees come to our country, but all Muslims? Seriously? What kind of signal does that send to the rest of the world that the United States is a serious player in creating peace and security?
You said that he made those comments and they represented him being unhinged, yet after he made them...
Yeah, they are unhinged.
Well, after he made them,
his
poll numbers went up 8 points in South Carolina. Now, wait.
11 points to be exact.
Are you saying that all those people who agree with Mr. Trump are unhinged?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. I can see why people are angry and scared, because this president has created a condition where our national security has weakened dramatically. I totally get that. But we're running for presidency of the United States here. This isn't, a different kind of job. You have to lead. You cannot make rash statements and expect the rest of the world to respond as though, well, it's just politics. Every time we send signals like this, we send a signal of weakness, not strength. And so it was an unhinged statement, which is why I'm asking him to consider changing his views.
I want security for this country, okay? I want security. I'm tired of seeing what's going on between the border, where the people flow over, people come in, they live, they shoot. I want security for this country. We have a serious problem with, as you know, with radical Islam. We have a tremendous problem. It's not only a problem here, it's a problem all over the world. I want to find out why those two young people, those two horrible young people in California, when they shot the 14 people, killed them, people they knew, people that held a wedding reception for them. I want to find out, many people saw pipe bombs and all sorts of things all over their apartment. Why weren't they vigilant? Why didn't they call? Why didn't they call the police? And by the way, the police are the most mistreated people in this country. I will tell you that. The most mistreated people.
But can I say,
we need vigilance. We have to find out. Many people knew about what was going on. Why didn't they turn those two people in so that you wouldn't have had all the death? There's something going on, and it's bad. And I'm saying we have to get to the bottom of it. That's all I'm saying. We need security.
We want to hear from all of you on this. According to Pew Research, the U.S. admits more than 100,000 Muslim immigrants every single year on a permanent lifetime basis. I want to ask the rest of you to comment on this. Do you agree that we should pause Muslim immigration until we get a better handle on our homeland security situation, as Mr. Trump has said, beginning with you, Governor Kasich?
No, I've been for pausing on admitting the Syrian refugees. And the reason why I've done is I don't believe we have a good process of being able to vet them. But, you know, we don't want to put everybody in the same category. And, you know, I'll go back to something that had been mentioned just a few minutes ago. If we're going to have a coalition, we're going to have a coalition not just of people in the western part of the world, our European allies, but we need the Saudis, we need the Egyptians, we need the Jordanians, we need the Gulf states, we need Jordan. We need all of them to be part of exactly what the first George Bush put together in the first Gulf War. It was a coalition made up of Arabs and Americans and Westerners, and we're going to need it again. And if we try to put everybody in the same, call everybody the same thing, we can't do it. And that's just not acceptable. But I think a pause on Syrian refugees has been exactly right for all the governors that have called for it, and also, of course, for me as the governor of Ohio.
Thank you, sir. We want to hear from the rest of you. Governor Christie, your take.
Now, Maria, listen, I said right from the beginning that we should take no Syrian refugees of any kind. And the reason I said that is because the FBI director told the American people, told Congress, that he could not guarantee he could vet them and it would be safe. That's the end of the conversation. I can tell you, after spending 7 years as a former federal prosecutor, right after 9/11, dealing with this issue, here's the way you need to deal with it. You can't just ban all Muslims. You have to ban radical Islamic jihadists. You have to ban the people who are trying to hurt us. And the only way to figure that out is to go back to getting the intelligence community the funding and the tools that it needs to be able to keep America safe. And this summer we didn't do that. We took it away from the NSA. It was a bad decision by the president, bad by those in the Senate who voted for it. And if I'm president, we'll make our intelligence community strong, and we won't have to keep everybody out. We're just going to keep the bad folks out and make sure they don't harm us.
Thank you, sir. Senator Rubio, where do you stand?
Well, first of all, let's understand why we're even having this debate and why, you know, Donald's topped in some of that anger that's out there about this whole issue, because this president has consistently underestimated the threat of ISIS. If you listened to the State of the Union the other night, he described them as a bunch of guys with long beards on the back of a pickup truck. They are much more than that. This is a group of people that enslaves women and sells them as brides. This is a group of people that burns people in cages, that is conducting genocide against Christians and Yazidis and others in the region. This is not some small-scale group. They are radicalizing people here in the United States. They're conducting attacks around the world. So you know what needs to happen? It's a very simple equation, and it's going to happen when I'm president. If we do not know who you are, and we do not know why you are coming when I am president, you are not getting into the United States of America.
Senator Cruz, where do you stand? Senator Cruz.
You know, I understand why Donald made the comments he did, and I understand why Americans are feeling frustrated and scared and angry when we have a president who refuses to acknowledge the threat we face, and even worse, who acts as an apologist for radical Islamic terrorism. But I think what we need is a commander-in-chief who is focused like a laser on keeping this country safe and on defeating radical Islamic terrorism. What should we do? First, we should pass the Expatriate Terrorist Act, legislation I've introduced that says if an American goes and joins ISIS and wages jihad against America, that you forfeit your citizenship and you cannot come in on a passport. And secondly, we should pass the legislation that I've introduced that suspends all refugees from nations that ISIS or al-Qaeda control significant territory. Just last week, we saw 2 Iraqi refugees vetted using the same process the president says will work, that were arrested for being alleged ISIS terrorists. If I am elected president, we will not let in refugees from countries controlled by ISIS or al-Qaeda. And when it comes to ISIS, we will not weaken them. We will not degrade them. We will utterly and completely destroy ISIS.
Dr. Carson, where do you stand? Do you agree with Mr. Trump?
Well, first of all, recognize it is a substantial problem, but like all of our problems, there isn't a single one that can't be solved that cannot be solved with common sense if you remove the ego and the politics. And clearly what we need to do is get a group of experts together, including people from other countries, some of our friends from Israel, who've had experience screening these people, and come up with some new guidelines for immigration and for visas for people who are coming into this country. That's the thing that obviously makes sense. We can do that. And as far as the Syrians are concerned, Al-Saqqa province, perfect place. They have infrastructure. All we need to do is protect them. They'll be in their own country. And that's what they told me when I was in Jordan in November. Let's listen to them, and let's not listen to our politicians.
So it should be clear that both of you do not agree with Mr.
So are we going to ban Muslims from India, from Indonesia, from countries that are our strong allies that we need to build better relationships with? Of course not. What we need to do is destroy ISIS. I laid out a plan at the Citadel to do just that. And it starts with creating a no-fly zone and safe zones to make sure refugees are there. We need to lead a force, a Sunni-led force, inside of Syria. We need to embed with the Iraqi military. We need to arm the Kurds directly. We need to reestablish the relationships with the Sunnis. And we need the lawyers off the back of the warfighters. That's how you solve the problem. You don't solve it by big talk where you're banning all Muslims and making it harder for us to build the kind of coalition for us to be successful.
Thank you, Governor.
Mr. Trump, sometimes, and maybe in the heat of a campaign, you say things and you have to dial them back. Last week, the New York Times editorial board quoted you as saying that you would impose up to a 45% tariff on Chinese goods.
That's wrong. They were wrong. It's the New York Times. They're always wrong.
Well,
they were wrong.
You never said because
no,
they provided
what I said at an editorial board
remarks.
I would use, they were asking me what to do about North Korea. China, they don't like to tell us, but they have total control, just about, of North Korea. They can solve the problem of North Korea if they wanted to. But they taunt us. They say, well, we don't really have control. Without China, North Korea doesn't even eat. China is ripping us on trade. They're devaluing their currency, and they're killing our companies. Thousands and thousands. You look at the number of companies and the number in terms of manufacturing and plants that we've lost 50,000 because of China.
So now, you never advocated putting a tariff on their goods?
We've lost anywhere between 4 and 7 million jobs because of China. What I said this, we have very unfair trade with China. We're going to have a trade deficit of $505 billion this year with China. A lot of that is because they devalue their currency. What I said to the New York Times is that we have great power, economic power over China. And if we wanted to use that, and the amount, and where the 45% comes in, that would be the amount based on their devaluations that we should get, What I'm saying is this, I'm not saying we do it, but if they don't start treating us fairly and stop devaluing and let their currency rise so that our companies can compete and we don't lose all of these millions of jobs that we're losing, I would certainly start taxing goods that come in from China. Who the hell has to lose $505 billion a year?
I'm sorry, sir, you lost me, but I do want to understand that.
Well, it's not that complicated, actually.
Then I apologize.
Okay.
But then I want to understand, if you don't want a 45% tariff, you say that wasn't the figure, would you be open, or are you open to slapping a higher tariff on Chinese goods of any sort to go back at them?
Okay, just so you understand, I know so much about trade with China. Carl Icahn today, as you know, endorsed me. Many businessmen want to endorse me.
I know, but that's
Carl said, no, but he's somebody that, these are the kind of people that we should use to negotiate, not the kind of people that we have who are political hacks who don't know what they're doing, and we have problems like this. These are the kind of people. We should use our best and our finest. Now, here's what I'm saying. China, they send their goods in, we don't tax, they do whatever they want to do. They do whatever they do. Okay.
And then right now,
when we do business with China, they tax us. You don't know it. They tax us. I have many friends that deal with China. They can't deal. Number one, they don't want the product. And when they finally get the product, it is taxed. And if you look at what happened with Boeing, and if you look at what happened with so many companies that deal, so we don't have an equal playing field. I'm saying absolutely. We don't have to continue to lose $505 billion as a trade deficit for the privilege of dealing dealing with China. I'm a free trader. I believe it. But we have to be smart, and we have to use smart people to negotiate. I have the largest bank in the world as a tenant of mine. I sell tens of millions of dollars. I love China. I love the Chinese people, but they laugh themselves. They can't believe how stupid the American leadership is.
Their own shelter, whether it's established as a home
if they
or a
don't treat
home with a
us fairly,
spectacular
hey,
view.
their whole trade thing is tariff. You
Or a
can't deal with China
conversation
without
filled
tariff.
to
They do it to us,
while
we
some
don't do
just
it.
dream
It's
of a
not
cozy
fair
corner.
trade.
At B&B Housing, we make your dream big with easy online access, doorstep delivery, and an amazingly friendly service. The door to your dream home opens easy with us.
Interface
Home
against
loans
China.
from B&B Housing Finance.
We do need China. Donald's right about North Korea. I mean, the fact is that they need to put the pressure on. And frankly, we need to intercept ships coming out of North Korea so they don't proliferate all this dangerous material. But what he's talking about, I think, has got merit. And I'm not putting that tariff for whatever he's saying here, but here's what I am saying.
I'm liking him tonight.
No, for too long, what happens is somebody dumps their product in the country and takes our people's jobs, and then we go to an international court, and it takes them like a year or two to figure out whether you're cheating us. And guess what? The workers out of a job. So when they can be found against that country that's selling products and shares lower than the cost of what it takes to produce things, then what do we tell the worker? Oh, you know, it just didn't work out for you. I think we should be for free trade, but I think fair trade. And when countries violate trade agreements or dump products in this country, we need to stand up against those countries that do that without making them into an enemy. And I want to just suggest to you, how do I know this? Because so many people in my family worked in steel mills, and they didn't work with the white collar, they worked in a blue collar. And the fact is, those jobs are critical. They're hardworking members of the middle class, and they need to be paid attention to because they're Americans and they carry the load. So let's demand open trade, but fair trade in this country. That's what I think we need to do.
But on this point, if I may add something on this point, we are all frustrated with what China's doing. I think we need to be very careful with tariffs, and here's why. China doesn't pay the tariff. The buyer pays the tariff. If you send a tie or a shirt made in China into the United States and an American goes to buy it at the store and there's a tariff on it, it gets passed on in the price to the consumer. So I think the better approach, the best thing we can do to protect ourselves against China economically is to make our economy stronger, which means reversing course from all the damage Barack Obama is doing to this economy. It begins with tax reform. Let's not have the most expensive business tax rate in the world. Let's allow companies to immediately expense. It continues with regulatory reform. Regulations in this country are out of control, especially the Employment Prevention Agency, the EPA, and all of the rules they continue to impose on our economy and hurting us. How about Obamacare, a certified job killer? It needs to be repealed and replaced. And we need to bring our debt under control, make our economy stronger. That is the way to deal with China at the end of the day.
Neil, the problem with what Marco is saying is that it takes too long. They're sucking us dry, and it takes too long. It would just, you absolutely have to get involved with China. They are taking so much of what we have in terms of jobs, in terms of money.